is Karl Heinz Hinrichs, who is joining us from Germany. He's an engineer by training, but also a peace builder who has been with us for some time. And he's going to share with us what the institution is doing and or has in mind for Africa. I think he's joining us from Germany, or is it Austria? Karl Heinz, you are welcome to Global Peace Studies. And so please, you may proceed, start your presentation. We are all ears and eyes, as it were, waiting anxiously for your talk.
Okay,
Thank you.
Josh, thank you very much. So I tried to open my presentation. Can you see it?
Maybe it is still coming, but not yet.
Just a moment. I have to open the screen. I see my presentation on my screen already. You can't see it, huh?
No, not yet.
Just a moment. Yeah, moment, just a moment. So
there. Yes.
You can see.
Yes.
You can see it now, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Fine, wonderful.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a moment. So, yeah. So I would like, George, if possible, let me say 20 to 25 minutes roughly. Would this be okay?
Yeah, that should be okay.
Wonderful. Okay,
right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. I would like to make a proposal today. What could be run better in future for Africa and for the rest of the world. I'm German engineer, but living for 37 years in the Alps, in the Austrian Alps, in the evaluation of 1,100 meters. So, but moment. But for the you can see still see my picture, yeah?
Yes, you can see it.
Yes, we see it. We see it, but please, you have to unmute.
So, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Now, okay, ladies and gentlemen, the first is the fundamental humanity principle, EVAL. What does that mean? I am committed to the fundamental humanity principle reference of for all life, which is in particular means rejection of every physical, psychological, and verbal violence and demand for fair, objective, and respectful dialogues, eye level, with the political decision makers above all important questions. This is the fundamental humanity principle of EVA. Please allow me, today is May 8th. It's a terrible day in history. It's the end of the Second World War, and Germany, Germany surrendered unconditionally, and World War II ended in Europe. My hometowns, Hamburg and Berlin, were completely destroyed in the center and could actually no longer rebuild. We must do everything possible that this happens never again, and therefore we are here together. This was Berlin, 1945, and this was most German big cities looked like that, completely destroyed. This is my hometown, Hamburg, before the war, and this is Hamburg after the war. And I have been living there in 1943 in the middle of the bombs and the firewalls, and but I survived with my family. But 40,000 Germans did not survive, and they burned in the firestorm. It's so terrible, and today it's the anniversary of this day. So we have to do everything that this would never happen again. Just a moment. So, the decision of war or peace, that means war between people and war with nature. We are in the situation that we are also have a war with the nature, is our most important question for humanity. EVAL World Solidarity is trying to make a contribution to a peaceful world. We will no longer allow ourselves to be incited by news agencies and other media that, for example, made us aware of the necessity of the Iraq war in 2003 and later on the Kuwait war. The news agencies are often enough the pioneers of psychological preparation for war through incitement, one-sided representations, omissions, and taking sides. We urgently need a global, balanced, grassroots, democratic, fair, well-organized, transparent, and non-profit information and dialogue system. A system without paternalism, without advertising, without party or business lobbying, without collecting user data from commercial purposes. The evaluations are the core element of the concept and are particularly intended for the average population in the world. We will no longer allow ourselves to be incited and driven into bubbles or echo chambers by any media, propagandist, or PR managers. The major goal is to get as close as possible to the truth on important national and international policy issues, especially when it comes to war or peace or environmental destruction. Before I get to specific questions about Tanzania and Africa, I would like to use the example of the evaluation Ukraine conflict with the code EVAL to show how the system of evaluation works. So I'm sorry, some pictures are in German. I just want to show you the principle, how it works. Will we little, infinitely arrogant human spirits finally understand our situation, that not only the sun could color this sky red? It helps not to put our brain into the sand. We have to face the reality. And we are, believe me, we are on the straight way to a global nuclear war. We are not very far away from it. And Africa also will suffer in case that this happens because of the global winter, and will bring Africa in huge problems also. So we are working day and night on the evaluation Ukraine conflict. The story of a conflict up to February 24th, 2022, which threatens to tear the world into an abyss. Truth is a foundation for stable long-term peace. This inseparably includes justice, fair, objective dialogue, and on equal terms, balancing of interest, environmental protection, food security, and the willingness to put oneself in the position of the opponent or the enemy. This is missing in this moment. The whole West is completely against Russia, but they have many, many reasons to fear the West. This will be documented in this big documentation, which will be published in 2 or 3 months, roughly. So this evaluation has 11 chapters, and so that everybody can see what he wants to know exactly. It is just here over the overlook what the chapters will be. Very important are the evaluation status, ES. So each information gets a status. And this status can be upgraded or downgraded depending on the information which are coming from outside. It's a very fair, transparent, and basic democratic system. So sorry for this German. I just want to show you the system. UC1 is the historic problems between Russia and Soviet Union up to 1989. And so here are the different situation. And you see on the right side, ES 100, that means this is the evaluation status 100. This is 100% clear. Nobody has any doubts that this has happened. Then it comes to the point that we also have comments. And when we have comments, for instance, from EVAL or from comments from a guest, it will be marked by a different color so that everybody can see what is the fact and what is the comment. And okay. So, and in the beginning of this big evaluation, there will be results for the reader in Harry. That means is we put it all together, the results of this big evaluation. Sorry also for German, just only to show you, as I told you before, the system. So, and you can see here in the result, in the bottom, you can see it has the evaluation status 70. And the basis for this was the documents UC103 and so on. But when there comes a new document from outside, so for instance, from Nikolaus Schwarz, he brought us a new document. So we consider this document and say, okay, we have to upgrade or downgrade this evaluation factor. The same with this, okay. So, because every document has a code that is always valid, every person on the globe can provide factual information that is evaluated by international teams and considered if serious or valid and valid. Transparency and the opportunity to participate create trust. We develop a balanced opinion in solidarity and thus undermine hatred, one-sidedness, lobbyism, and propaganda on the internet and in the mass media, which unfortunately can happen again and again. We need, of course, volunteers for evaluation teams in future. Team 1 checking the entries for seriousness, and team 2, the determination of the evaluation status. We have a declaration on Africa. We deeply regret the cruel and human contemptuous acts being done by white Europeans, Americans in the last centuries with Africans. We reject the further partial exploitation of Africa in this form of modern economic colonialism. We will do everything we can to help people in the exploited continent of Africa effectively without own profit intentions or advantages through concrete actions so that the Africans can stay in their countries and not being degraded to refugees. The Africans would like to stay in their homelands, but their biggest wish is if they would have a change of survival. We can't take over more, a huge amount of African refugees to Europe. The right-wing politicians will come more and more to power. So the Africans have to stay at home, and we have to make sure that they can survive in their home, countries. We must to do everything so that this would be possible in future. The long road to help Africa. First, what are the fundamental problems of African countries? Second, how can the problems be alleviated, respectively be solved? In the time of global armament, this will be very difficult But with the EVAL World Solidarity, we might be able to do it. This is what our global children, whose lobbyists as EWS are demanding. So these are the most important people in the world. And we have considered their interests, only their interests, not the interest of the big powers, of the white man in the West and the capital. These are the interests we have to consider in the future. EVAL will never accept a picture like that. And this is absolutely not necessary. We have to make education for the young African people and never have we have to force them to go to participate in wars. This picture is so impressive. I give you 1 minute to read the text on the top.
Karl Heinz?
Yeah.
Are you there? Please proceed. I couldn't hear you for
no, it's okay.
A moment. Okay,
So
go ahead,
just
please.
to give you some time. So
right.
The long road to help Africa. We need as a first step evaluation. For instance, Tanzania, it would get the code EV-TAN. Evaluation Zimbabwe, EV-ZIM. Evaluation whole Africa, AFR. So details, e.g. Tanzania. The first code would be TAN 1, climate change problems in Tanzania. TAN 2, Xissus rich poor. TAN 3, youth unemployment. Just only for instance, it's your decisions how to define the single chapter. Let us evaluate together with MAMA, EVAL World Solidarity, universities, NGOs, and others the fundamental problems of Tanzania, Africa, and the world. The EVAL Parliament could be the place if wanted. So, EVAL World Solidarity means rejection of all physical, psychological, and verbal violence, as told before. It means also access to information of the EVAL info system. We are collecting for 60 years, all kind of information, but for the time being, of course, only in German. But it will change step by step in the future. Free of lobbying interest, without advertising, and without personal data collection. EVAL World Solidarity means objective and respectful dialogues on an equal level with political decision makers about all important future issues. And it means grassroots, transparent evaluations of important future issues that are continually critically reviewed and evaluated. This is the logo picture of EVAL World Solidarity. And so I thank you very much for your attention. So, okay, I needed exactly 20 minutes. So and now I'm ready to answer your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for this interesting presentation. And I'm sure there will be a number of questions since the EVAL is a new thing to many people here, I assume. And therefore, it will be great that you answer the questions. In fact, I saw one already from Thomas asking about EVAL, what it is. And maybe you could just in a nutshell, just explain it, please, what it stands for. And of course, you've just talked about it, but maybe just summarize a bit what it stands for, etc. Because I know it comes from, German words, it's an acronym, as it were, right?
Yeah. Yeah, EVAL means in the core, no physical, psychological, and verbal violence to anybody. It means dialogues on eye level with all people in the world to solve the long-term problems. We are convinced that the political decision makers can't solve the long-term problems. The real long-term problems will not be solved. In opposite, we are going now to a new armament in the world. It's a very, very terrible situation. And we have no hope in future that all the problems, the SDGs, for instance, from the United Nations could be solved when this new Cold War starts again. It's so absolutely terrible. We have to stand together, the universities in the world, the NGOs, the educated, engaged people, and we need all continents. Of course, Africa plays a very important role in this connection. This is, in some words, just the explanation what EVAL means. The good thing is, EVAL, as you said before, is a German abbreviation, Ehrfurcht vor allem Leben, as a reference of all lives. But the German word Evaluierung and the English word evaluation includes the word EVAL. So it's a good combination. It's registered mark in Austria and in Germany. Good.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Afiz, you have your hand up, please. You're welcome, Afiz.
Thank you so much for having me. We are very glad with the presentation. And firstly, I have to congratulate the survival of our presenter for him to have survived all the series of wars with experience that he has right from the birth to the present day. And I think he's in better position to actually pioneer how we can foster peace in the world. And I must say that we are doing the good job for the analysis that we had from your presentation. But based on the question that you raised about Africa, what is actually the fundamental problem in Africa? Then which of the continents or part of Africa have you tried to apply the problem if you have discovered the fundamental problem? What actually solution have you applied to the problem? And which country have you applied it to? What are the results that you are seeing from applying it? Or you are still having the template of applying the solution? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Frankly speaking, I didn't understand all the words. Please speak slowly and clearly. So, but
okay.
I think
your is that,
yeah. Please once more your main question. Yeah.
My question is that in your presentation, you talked about Africa fundamental problems.
Yeah.
So what are the Africa fundamental problems? That's number one question.
No, I can't answer it. You must answer it. You must give us the information. What are your main problems you have? And what are your demands to Europe, for instance, or to the rest of the world, especially to the north, the industrial north? What are your demands to solve or reduce these problems? You must tell us. For instance, for Austria, EVAL made a long list of 12 points. We declared the 12 main problems of Austria. And this is the basic for discussion. You must give us the information. What are the main problems from your side of view? That means you need some time to discuss this and to decide this. And we would like to get it. And then we discuss what we could do to help or reduce your problems. It's also in our interest, as I told you in my short lecture, we cannot accept any more black people from Africa when they come in millions, and they might come one day in millions when the climate change is progressing. So it will be a huge problem for both sides. We must now start a big action of help that the Africans can stay in their home and they have a chance to survive. That means a fair treatment of Africa, a fair trade, a fair support, but not for the rich people, but for the normal, the average people, and for the ladies who are very active in Africa. So you must tell us what your demands are and where we could help you.
Okay, thank you. I can now see that you are just trying to create the template to raise questions about the fundamental problems of Africa and what is the way forward. I said you are now trying to create a template. It's not as if you have gathered the information already, but we are just seeking for the fundamental problems of Africa and what is the way forward of solving all the problems so that we can all live in peace in the world, if I may get your view very well. So what is the channel, if there is any similar problems identified, which channel can we use to pass the problem across to you?
Sorry, George, can you help me, please? I didn't understand everything. What did Maximilian say?
That's actually Hafiz. Hafiz Sufianu is asking about the challenges that Africa is facing and whether you have solutions to such challenges or problems.
Yeah, I said before, you must tell us your main problems from your side of view, and you must tell us what would be the demands or your wishes that we could help you as much as possible. We must make it clear to the European society. You know, we have also big problems, financial problems now. For instance, in Germany, you must understand, it's unbelievable. They had no money for Africa, for social purposes or for education. 10 years, no money for these purposes. But when the Ukraine conflict came, within 2 days, they had 100 billion euros for armament. Yeah, Austria 10 billion for armament. So we must make them clear this war must come to an end soonest, and for this reason we work on the evaluation Ukraine conflict. It is absolutely crazy, and we must take this money for the armament in the world to support especially Africa. Africa is our neighbor, not the United States. Africa and Russia is our neighbor. And we have to have good relation to Russia and best relation to Africa. So, of course, it's a question of money. This is a very, very important point. There's no doubt. But is there something we could do under this money question? For instance, free trade, that we take over your products, yet that we limit the restriction when the African goods come to Europe. And I think there are some other points, but we would like to have a complete list of all the demands you have and your main problems.
All right, thank you so much, Karl, Heinz. And now I'll go to Donna and then Thomas. Donna Pido, please.
Better Thomas should go first.
Okay.
Oh, Thomas.
Okay, I'm happy to go first. Yeah, hello, Karl Heinz.
Yeah, hello. Hello.
So yes, my parents met during the Blitz in London. So when you were a little boy sheltering in Hamburg, my parents are meeting in London under the German bombing. So
Yeah.
we're both products of this horrible war.
Yeah.
And I was actually born on this day, May the 8th. So it's my birthday. And I decided to join.
Birthday.
Well, I've
Happy
always
birthday,
taken that
Thomas.
as symbolic because I've worked for peace for many decades, like you. And I was just brought up, you know, like you, to never want these kind of wars again. It was my duty. And I was asking myself, how shall I celebrate my birthday? I said, well, I'll go and join the Africa Peace Studies people because that's my job, you know. So I'm going to just make a couple of suggestions as to how you might channel your incredible will to make a difference to peace. Firstly, I've met many peace researchers in Britain, I'm most familiar, and conflict researchers who've done what you're doing, and they've computerized a lot of data. So they analyze the conflicts, the problems around different countries. You've invented your own unique sort of coding system, which is great, but I think you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. I think you need to be in contact with both German and British peace researchers who for the last 50 years have been kind of doing this. And you would benefit greatly, I think, from talking to some, you know, other experts. It's not my sort of branch of peace research, but I just know they've been doing it for so long, because it would be a waste of your incredible intellectual energy to kind of do something that was done 30 years ago and is already computerized and has already got 10 PhDs on it. Like, find out who's doing this. As our friend Afif said, it's like you're creating a template for problem analysis and solution. Well, you know, this has been done, and that's all I can recommend. I can put you in touch with some people that could, and the question is whether, you know, I just hope that it will, I think it will increase your effectiveness. And okay, that's one observation. The other observation, the bit I get very excited about is when you talk about the need for a new world information order, transparent and truth-based. That's when I get very excited, because yes, we need that. We don't, you know, we don't have that. And I don't know if you know, but about a few decades ago, the then Secretary General of the UN, Amadou Mbao, who was African, proposed a new world information order. And I think we should go back and look at what he proposed, because all I know is that it was absolutely crushed. America, Britain, the capitalist corporate powers that run the world's military systems. I don't know what Russia's position was at the time. They silenced it and they forced him out of office as Secretary General of the UN. I was working at the University of London and I was shocked. So I think we should reopen the case on Amadou Mbao's call for a new world information order. Because the thing is, of course, that the big media companies that control the world's information flow, that's the last thing they want. Because it, you know, and so I think we shouldn't be naive. The geopolitics of this are huge. They're stacked against that. And the final point I want to make about truth, I agree 100%. What we're lacking is truth within the world's information system. How can we improve that? Well, I've suggested the very first place we start is in parliaments. They are the democratic assemblies where our representatives go to make decisions, but they have stopped telling the truth. In Britain, we had a parliament taken over by rogues and liars and cheats who did Brexit. So I fought back by proposing a law that all politicians have to tell the truth or they lose office. It's very, very simple. That is feasible. And I want to just announce to you guys that the Welsh Parliament, where I lived for 10 years, the Senate, is passing such a bill. In Wales, if you're a politician and you're in Parliament and you lie, you will now lose office. I'd like to see that in Germany, in Russia, in America, and in all African countries. But Anyway, there we are. That's my suggestions. I hope that's useful. But, you know, hats off to your work. It's brilliant.
Thank you so much, Thomas, and a happy birthday. That's the best way to celebrate it with us. What a unique treat. And so, Karl, Heinz, maybe you've got a response or some words on Thomas's ideas.
Thomas, okay, thank you very much. There are so many points. Of course, this crazy attack on London by the V2 rockets from the Nazi regime was terrible. And so Germany had not to be astonished that there was a reaction of this, of course. Okay, but as a matter of fact, this happened and was terrible, and I survived, and I would never have this again in the world and in the future. During my life, I was as a civilian engineer, a German engineer in the Middle East, and I was also came into the wars, Iran, Iraq. So I get fed up with war. And I have been living in West Berlin and saw all the huge problems in the Cold War. So whatever I can do, I will do it for peace. That's the only sense that I still not alive. Okay, so it's very, very difficult to unite the different organization NGOs. Even in Austria, it could not be arranged in the last 20 years. Everybody cooks his own soup, has a small circle, this small environment, and this is the best, and you can support me or not, but working together is a big problem. So, but when we want to change something in Africa, in the world, and elsewhere, we must work together. So this, the first proposal, George is a member of the university in Tanzania. I think first we have to try to unite the universities in the world. I have contact to Russian university. It seems to be that they are ready to do it. German and Austrian universities, there's no doubt, it can be arranged. So the first step for a social, for basic democratic information system is that these universities and the NGOs try to work together. And and then we can go to the broad population, to the so-called normal citizens in the road, and say, look, we are a big organization with universities and NGOs and so on worldwide, and we have a system to find or to go to in direction truth as good as possible, and you can trust our information. And please don't accept any calls for supporting wars or for armament and so on. So this would be the first fundamental step, uniting the universities in the world. So this was this point. Sorry, what was the other point you asked? And to tell the truth, the politicians should not lie. Yeah, it is good, and I'm very astonished that in Wales and in Scotland or where it will be realized. Oh, that's great. But the question is, of course, what is a lie? Huh? Is the glass half full or half empty? Huh? So for this reason, we insist on having dialogues on eye level. We try to make it now in Austria and maybe next time also in Germany. We want the political decision makers to come to a dialogue, to agree to a dialogue on eye level, And we ask the question, the important question, but not on the level of a talk show. Yeah, talk shows are terrible. This is 50 minutes and everybody tells what he wants. These was in a fair, civilized manner. Yeah. So please, we have these documents. My good Mr. XY. What do you say? Okay, he will give an answer. Okay, we have additional these documents and these videos. What is your opinion? What did you tell us 10 years ago or 5 years ago? What are you doing now? So as it's a long process, it has to go step by step, of course, and it will be very difficult. But doing nothing is not the solution. We must come to a united, civilized organization, or let me say community. And once more, I repeat it, to make a connection with the universities would be, in our mind, the first step. I have 130 advisors in the EVAL movement, and the big majority is also accept this. Also said we must try to come to a connection with the educated people in the world, and these are the universities as a first step.
That's an excellent proposal. And let's continue with questions. And Donna, would you like to say something?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I have a comment by way of an anecdote, and then I'm going to complain about dead white guys, okay, and intellectual arrogance. Last Friday, a colleague who I treasure, who happens to be a Samia are a Luo-speaking people, was complaining to me that the Maasai in northwestern Tanzania are intransigent under the government effort to move them along the border between Kenya and Tanzania, but to the east, in an area that he says is uninhabited. I believe him because I don't know Tanzania very well. But he's saying that the Maasai are inflexible and unwilling to accept a change. I have studied Maasai art and aesthetics since 1970. And what I can tell everybody in this world is that they are the most flexible people in existence and possibly forever in history. But they have their own paradigms and their own models. And now we see governments and churches and NGOs trying to impose the models identified and described by dead white guys 100 or 75 years ago. Instead of looking at what people believe themselves, and believe means know, no, K-N-O-W, not N-O. In my several years of experience in social marketing of messages about sexually transmitted diseases, I learned that if you don't find out what the people think, you can't influence them. You cannot, and I said this last time, that you cannot impose models generated for a European or North American, a Northern Hemisphere environment. You cannot impose those models on people whose environments are very, very different from the ones that the dead white guys worked in. I explained to my friend that he should, of course, I recommended an article that I have published, that he should read that and perhaps advise whoever he's talking to in the TZ government to try to find out what the Maasai believe, not what somebody said the Maasai, not what Jacobs or Galati said that the Maasai believed back in the 70s, but what they believe now. And I want to address the issue of universities. I'm looking for the guy. Hi, Karl Heinz. Thank you for being here. My complaint about universities is about intellectual arrogance and the notion that the universities are the best place to generate new ideas or models or formulate theories or whatever. It's in Enkitagata. That is the place where Maasai women sit under a tree in the afternoon to stitch beads. It's at the bus stop. It's in the cattle market. It's not in the university. When I hire research teams, I do not take university students because they tend to be very arrogant or the victims of imposed arrogance by the people they're trying to get information from. Maybe I should just shut up for a little while. I think we have to be, I think this ranking of intellectual capability is wrong across the board. And there you have it. And Kitagata is under the tree in the shade, starting about 3 o'clock. And that's where the new ideas are generated by females, among females. Then they tell their husbands or boyfriends or their sons or whatever. And then it gets to the cattle market. It's like Paris fashion begins in and what's the name of that city in northern Italy where fashion begins and then it's transferred to Paris. And then the Americans come and copy the Parisians. Am I making any sense?
It's called Milan. I think you're talking about Milan.
Milan, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very old and making this feeble. Yes, it's Milan is where it starts, but the Milanese get their inspiration from New York City high school students. They go to New York City to watch the kids coming out of school at the end of the day. They take that back to Milan. They generate their new collections. The Parisians come and copy the Milanese or are inspired by the Milanese. And then the Americans are inspired by the Parisians. The British have nothing to do with it, so we can forget them. But my point is that as long as we retain a separation between the university and other people, we're going nowhere. And if we don't find out what the people themselves believe or what they do, Maasai can adjust to move into a new area, but they have to do it in their own way. That it cannot be imposed by a government that thinks it's superior to its own people. And I'm including everybody, not just the Tanzanian government. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Donna. And as you may know that during our conference, which is happening in 2 weeks' time, we will visit actually a Maasai community that's actually on our program. And so I'm sure that we're going to learn a little bit, especially for some people who'll be meeting them for the first time for a number of hours. I think that's going to be quite edifying. So thank you very much for your anecdote and your contribution. And
George, I have to ask you, will those be Kisongo Maasai? Tanzanian Maasai?
Yes, yeah, Tanzania,
oh,
that's
Kisongo.
right.
Okay,
Right.
so I know their section. I know their beadwork.
Great.
Okay.
Great, lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
but Donna, what is your proposal? You say the arrogance of the universities. This might be partly the truth, but what is your proposal? We have to find a solution. We have to have some kind of a world community, and starting in the area of communication and information for especially. And what is your proposal? It's difficult. There's no doubt. Absolutely difficult. But we are on the road to a nuclear war, and this is the end of the whole world. We must now find a solution and say we must do everything to prevent this and to find new ways. Yeah, the arrogance, yeah, okay. But I hope when George is organizing the conference in 2 weeks in Tanzania, I hope that the African universities won't be so arrogant as maybe as the American or the European universities.
Yeah.
I hope so, as they are different. But
No,
my
they're not.
experience with university is I didn't think that they are so much arrogant. I'm not sure.
They're worse. Let me say no more.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. So You are muted, Donna. But I think you said you.
I muted myself because I'll rant and rave for hours if I'm allowed to continue speaking. The solution can be found by people in universities only if they go out, not if they sit in their studies or their offices or their staff rooms or whatever and come up with solutions. And we have to, I'm not suggesting that we abandon the models that were generated by the dead white guys in the 1800s and up to the 1970s, because they have a certain validity, but we can't take them, which unfortunately governments and NGOs tend to do, to take them as set in stone and forever correct and accurate. But let me not talk anymore. I have too much to say. And we're writing right now, Martin and Odoch and I are writing an article for a conference on indigenous knowledge management. And we're trying to get at the roots of the extinction of curiosity and creativity in primary and sub-primary school children. What is it in East African cultures across the board that extinguishes curiosity and creativity before the child even gets to kindergarten? We have some ideas, but we don't really know. It's something that people need to be thinking about. But I find that non-African scholars are not paying enough attention to this and to issues like this, and are relying way too heavily on models that are generated outside of Africa. But now get the Africans to generate their own models. And how do you do that? That's a good question. I would refer people to Richard Manoff. Just Google him and you'll get some information. He was the pioneer of social marketing strategies in, I think, the 1940s, where if you need behavior change, and my specialty throughout the 90s was sexually transmitted diseases. So I know more about syphilis than anybody should want to know. It's very unpleasant, and I know way too much about HIV before the advent of antiretroviral drugs. But Google Richard Manoff, M-A-N-O-F-F, and ask yourself what of his models can be applied in whatever research you or your students are doing. And what Manoff says is first you find out what they think, and then you give it back to them in your own language, modified. If you are going for behavior change, just try tackling condom use and think about that. Medical doctors telling you, nothing can get through this condom. It's totally impervious. And then they don't understand why people in Western Kenya don't want to use mosquito nets, because the net traps their spirit force. Let me keep quiet. Don't talk.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Donna. And I'm sure that when your publication comes out, so many people will be really happy and we learn a lot from it. And the arrogance of universities, definitely that's an interesting theme. May I ask Peter, please, could you say something?
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a great honor. In keeping with the current conversation, I wish to just speak from this white world over here about universities, which is now being revealed from their behavior. Let me speak about the hospitality industry as a heading, which now includes prisons. I first realized that it included hospitals when I was working in operating rooms in the 70s, and they built new operating rooms everywhere because the medications had changed, and it meant that they couldn't keep the beds full. Hospitality industry is about keeping the beds full. Now we have a prison industry as the other part of the hospitality industry. We now realize, I hope, that universities have joined this industry completely. University administrations have nothing to do with university whatsoever. So when there is a disruption, like students pitching tents on the lawn, that is unacceptable to them. It's a managerial issue. It's a corporate world issue because there is corporate structural blindness. It is nobody's job in the administration of a hospitality industry to consider genocide. They're only there to consider keeping the beds full at the highest possible price and at the most efficient turnover. The other thing I wanted to mention, I put an article in the chat from Howard Richards that addresses the bounded organizations problem. Gavin Anderson, who is still with us, was really the creator of that wonderful idea of unbounded organization, working together across sectors for the public, for the general good. And also, Dr. Mariam Maniga's wonderful book addresses many of the root causes of the problems that you cite. I don't know if you can see it, but you all should have a copy of this and be reading it. I'm halfway through now because every day I read until my eyes glaze over, until my mind is baffled and astonished, partly at the brilliance of this author and partly at the persistence of the colonialist model, which is really a worldview. It is really a way of being and acting in the world under a perception of reality, which is severely distorted. And I say, in my work that I'm doing now, that the colonial worldview is the normal indigenous worldview when it's deeply, deeply traumatized for centuries. And there needs to be a reintegration. We can't reject one worldview over another, you know. We have to reintegrate this terrible spiritual wound that humanity collectively has undergone and continues to wound itself. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter, for your wisdom. And now I'll welcome.
Peter.
Sorry, Donna.
I just said Peter's brilliant.
That's right. Olufemi Oloba, please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, George, and thank you for the talk, Karl. Well, I think I would like to start with Donna's arrogance of the universities. She is totally right. The universities in Africa are even more arrogant than the European universities. We are worse in Africa. We practice arrogance worse than the Europeans, sadly. And we expect Africa to develop from the universities, but African universities are not even trying to bring from the gown to the town. They are keeping everything within a gown. Well, the long road to help Africa, and while I would like to disagree to a point that we all talk about helping Africa, but the greatest problem of Africa is violence. It is the war in Africa. But have we ever tried to find out the root cause of the violence of the war in Africa? We call the countries in Africa nations, but are we actually nations? I know that we have a sociological definition of nations in which we have to look at religion, language, and I think one other definition. But countries in Africa are not nations at all. we don't have a national identity. I'm a Nigerian. I call myself a Nigerian, but within Nigeria, the national identity of the Nigerian is not there. In my university, we had a conference recently. We were singing the national anthem. When the Nigerian anthem came, virtually every Nigerian there was just mumbling their mouth. The Chinese came to, it was a Chinese Asia conference. By the time the Chinese anthem was being sung, you will see the passion in the Chinese for their national anthem. The identities of the Africans, for their nations is not there. And until we can create an identity for the African, we cannot help Africa. Sadly, but that is what I believe in, because when you bring down these problems to the grassroots, the African is divided at the grassroots, down to the grassroots. But we keep talking about democracy, we keep talking about the way Europeans work, and like Donna said, you cannot make an European model work for Africa. It doesn't work. We have to develop our own model in Africa on how to solve our problems in Africa. No European model will work in Africa. No American model can work in Africa. We really need to go back to understand the way African communities existed pre-colonial times. For example, in Africa, in Nigeria, I'm a Yoruba man. We had communities. In the community, we had quarters. When there's a problem in the entire community, the quarter heads are called together. They deal with the problem in their quarters before they deal with it in the communities. It is not a top-down approach, it's a bottom-up approach. We need to look back and go back to understand what the problem is and how to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olufemi, for your comment. And we are looking for this Nigerian identity, Tanzanian identity, Kenyan identity, etc. Maybe we've got the African identity. All right, so another question, please, or comment?
Josh, sorry, I didn't understand everything from Olufemi. Only some words. The technical quality was sometimes not so good. So you see, I have some problems to understand everything just by language. Can you please say the important points from Olufemi?
Okay, so one thing, definitely there was a question about helping Africa, and saying that in Africa we have problems such as, conflicts, violence, war. And do you know the root cause, of this? Because before talking about helping, I think we need to know what's the problem and probably how it started and everything around it, so that we can now really bring about a solution. And so the root cause, that's actually an important issue to look at, of the problems that we face in Africa. And of course, we're saying that we also, many countries don't have an identity, a national identity. So probably that these are not nations as such. Maybe Thomas would like to say something about this so that you can clarify maybe some of the points raised by my colleagues. Thank you, Thomas, and then we'll go back to you, Karl Heinz.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to say, well, for me, it's not clear. I made a proposal today that we should try to have dialogues on eye level with the political decision makers. This would be a very, very important point, and not on the level of talk shows. For instance, the reason why we work out the evaluation Ukraine conflict is that we saw that the Russian government whether Putin is in power or not. Putin is representing Russian basic interests also. The Russian government asked the West 10 times, please don't bring the Ukraine into the NATO. This is the red line. You can't go over this red line. And the West knew it very, very well for 10 years and more. But they did it. They said on the NATO summit in 2008 in Bucharest, they decided that Georgia and Ukraine should come into the NATO. It was an absolutely red line, and it had to come to war one day. So the Russians have been waiting for some years, from 2014 to 2022, have been waiting for 8 years. There was the Minsk agreement, but nothing helped. So this is the point. We would come into the situation in Austria and especially in Germany to ask the government, why didn't you consider the basic fears and interests of Russia? Why didn't you do this? They are in a bubble, maybe controlled by the United States, by the Atlantic Bridge, I don't know. So what I want to say today is, first point once more, it must come to dialogues on eye level. And the second point is, we should come together with the NGOs, with the universities, and with other private people, civilians, to form a worldwide community. We have all technical possibilities now via the internet. Today, you are in Africa, I am in Austria, somebody is coming from, Thomas is coming from Britain, and Peter is coming from US. So it's fantastic. It's unbelievable, the technical possibilities we have today. So we should use these possibilities to form a big society, educated, engaged society, and what we are doing today, and all my dialogues I have in German, we are very civilized. We have very civilized dialogues. Yeah, it's everybody can speak, no interruption, so it's great. We should do something to try to unify the world, and that it comes really to effective dialogues. That is my main point. And the second point, once more, sorry for repeating, regarding Africa and Europe. I have a video in my data system from 2017. And in this video, there is a big bridge between Algeria or Morocco and Gibraltar, a big bridge. That's the only connection between Africa and Europe. And so in Africa, it's a terror. It's the climate change, huge problems, millions of refugees, and they can only come into Europe when they are educated people. That means we won't have your doctors and your workers and your engineers, but the uneducated people, they could stay in Africa. This will be a huge, huge, huge problem in the future. And we must try to find a solution in time. And I think the only solution can be to help Africa without having own interest and own profit. Just you should say where we can help the small farmers, the small people, but not the big organization, to help yourself. This should be the main point. So, also finally, dialogues, worldwide dialogues on eye level, and second, try to come together. When you say the universities are too arrogant, I'm sure not all. So let us find out who is not so arrogant that it's possible to cooperate. And let's try it together with the others, with the NGOs and the other organization. And George, you have a good chance now in 2 weeks to try to find a solution or to find a way that it comes to any kind of cooperation. My dear friends, we have fantastic technical possibilities we never had before. And I think we should use them. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Karl Heinz. Thomas, please.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed a lot in this session. Thank you, Karl Heinz, for raising all the issues. I think we're at the stage of asking questions. I don't think we can find the answers in this session. There are huge issues raised. I want to just throw in one of the issues that we haven't really discussed, which is the economics of knowledge, the geopolitics of knowledge. And I've been reading a book by a British investigative journalist called Tom Burgess about the super rich. He's written a very important book you should all read called something like It's a Crazy World. He's monitored the super rich in Britain who run the banks and run the Tory party. They're all making deals with people in Africa, in Central Asia, and they're working with the super rich of those countries to privatize their industries, to, you know, resource capitalism, to make profits ultimately. And this is what's happening now in London, and in Nairobi, and in many African capitals. And these people are super corrupt. So at the worst extreme, they don't care about killing off people that raise problems. These people have private bodyguards. They travel in, armored vehicles. And these people are thugs and criminals, and they are running the world. They're running Britain. And by the way, I'm speaking from France, not the UK. I'm a refugee from Brexit. These people did Brexit because they wanted to continue with their extractive capitalism stuff. Anyway, so that's what we're up against here. Let's not be naive. I'm just saying, right? Second point is about universities. Now, there are many universities in the world where there are pockets of freedom of thought, pockets of genuine intellectual inquiry into ultimate reality. You know, I'm a great fan of the original idea of the university here in Paris, in France. It was a safe haven for people of all nationalities to discuss ultimate reality. In Paris, people came from all over Europe and further afield, and they looked at the contributions of all cultures towards finding out what is the ultimate truth about X, Y, or Z. And there are still pockets where that's possible, but there are also terrible pressures to corporatize and privatize knowledge. And I just want to share an anecdote. I'm involved with a panel monitoring the Indian elections. I'm sitting with Sam Pitroda and his colleagues on a panel that's been, because Mr. Modi in India has done a deal with superpower rich corporate elites to create a sort of, a capitalist paradise. Invest in India and we'll silence the opposition. We'll imprison the opposition, we'll shut them up. And has been taking over the university sector in India. So my colleague Rahul Gandhi, who's the Congress party opposition, raised this as a point, saying the universities in India seem to have been taken over by the RSS, which is the sort of Hindu fascist organization behind the BJP. And immediately the press went for Gandhi, saying, oh, evil man, evil chap, threatening the integrity of Indian universities. And it's become a big thing. So what I've suggested to Rahul Gandhi is that he should spin this around and say, yes, the problem is that the Indian universities are being corporatized and turned into elite little specialisms, which can no longer do joined up thinking. They can't talk about peace. And I said, what if Rahul Gandhi said as his platform, we want to bring back universities for public service for the common good? And if every university in India had a peace studies department where they study Gandhi, they study the great contributions of Indian intellectuals over the centuries. In the university sector, there's research, there's teaching, and then there's public service. As Donna was saying, you go out into the community, you learn from the community. And that's always the third aspect of what universities are for. We've forgotten that. So I'm just giving you a little glimpse. This is a debate going on in India right now, the largest democracy in the world. I think universities are good, but they have to really defend their integrity for freedom of thought against the pressures of capitalism. And in Russia, I know, Karl Heinz, you love Russia. I love Russia too. But unfortunately, under Putin, my Russian intellectual friends are not allowed to speak freely. I'm in touch. I have been to Russia. I have many friends in the philosophical community in Russia. They're no longer allowed to speak freely. They couldn't join this Zoom call, or they would be arrested and silenced. So, you know, they have a different kind of pressure in the university sector in Russia. We still have freedom. Let's use it wisely, and you know, wherever we can, basically. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for your input.
Thomas, sorry, I'm not naive. I know how the world runs. I know what you are told about Modi in India and United States and Great Britain. I know everything. But by the way, you said I love Russia. I did not say that I love Russia. I'm just only a man who is saying that we did not we did not accept the fears, the basic fears of the Russian people. You know, you must understand that the crazy German Nazis attacked Russia and caused 20 million killed people, civilists and soldiers. Can you imagine this? 27 million people killed by the German troops in Russia. Can you imagine that they have a big fear? For them, everything what is bad and it's a danger is coming from the West. Napoleon went in Russia 1813. It was 500,000 soldiers, yeah, without any reason, just going to Moscow. So the Russians fear the West, and we must understand that. Yeah, and so when we don't understand this, we never will have peace. I don't love the Russians. I love them as I love the Africans and the Americans and all other people, not more and not less. But you say the super rich cooperate in for instance, in London and in Great Britain with the African super rich. Yes, of course, I know this. It's terrible. No? But we are the majority. We are the 99%. And we must try to find a way that this would be reduced, not from today to tomorrow, step by step, with a big patience, step by step, to make them clear we are the majority. And the only reason I'm here today, is have we a chance to realize this or not? Or should we say, okay, we know, I'm sure everybody here knows all the things you said some minutes ago. I'm sure everybody knows it. But we have to find a solution. And once more, we are the 99% or even more. Yeah? And let's try it. That's
Sure.
all. And
Well,
then
in
when
Britain,
you
we're about to get
today,
sorry,
today I learned
we're using
that
democracy.
the universities are not so suitable for this purpose. Maybe I have to learn it. The Austrian universities and German seem to be different. They, of course, they are also arrogant, but maybe not so well. Harvard or MTI in the US, I don't know. Okay. Yep, please.
You had a comment, Thomas? Or
Well, no, I mean, I was just saying about Britain, the tide is changing there. The use of democracy means that we're going to get a Labour government instead of the Tories, who sort of represent that arrogant colonial racist ideology, which I thought was long buried and gone, but it resurfaced. Well, you know, the British people finally have woken up and they're about to vote them out forever. I don't think they'll ever get back into power. And thank God for that. Yeah, so anyway, thank you, Karl Heinz. Keep up the good work, and everyone else on this call. Yeah.
excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas. And thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Karl Heinz. We are looking forward to meeting you again Wednesday. On Wednesday, we are meeting every Wednesday, and especially also for the conference that's coming up from the 23rd, we'll send you Zoom codes for those who cannot actually participate in person in Mwanza and Arusha. We are looking forward to seeing you. Thank you very much indeed, and
Professor
goodbye.
George and other friends, may
I'm
I
sorry?
just yes, sir. Sir, I am from India. Whatever discussions we have got today, it's really good that we are thinking. But sir, the first question I think we need to ask all, that is, am I at peace? Whenever we think of peace outside, let us think once again, am I at peace? And what are the conditions that may be outside? Can we think just one moment, am I at peace? At the very morning, we can do that, sir. I think that may be the starting line for African peace.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so, are we at peace? Am I at peace? See you next week. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.
Okay.
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 Thank you. Goodbye.